Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into digital PR and how it all ties back into SEO.
Okay.
Now, we're not going to be covering, the basics that you probably already know,
Yeah.
but we're really going to be going kind of deeper into this by dissecting a podcast episode from Digimark. And it's all about off-page SEO.
And this is interesting because, well, this episode, it's not just like the same old PR stuff.
Right.
It talks about how digital PR can shape how you look online, build those super important relationships, and then ultimately impact how you rank in searches.
And those rankings, that's what we're all after, right?
Totally.
So before we jump into the good stuff, I think it would be good to make sure we're all on the same page.
Go.
What is digital PR in today's world? Like, what does that even mean?
You can think of it as like traditional PR, but it's evolved. Like it's taken all the classic ways of communicating and mixed them with all the digital tools we have today. The goal, managing how your brand looks out there, building those relationships with the public, and as a side effect, really giving your SEO a boost.
And that boost, that SEO boost, that's what we're all here for. And I was actually really struck by how this episode really breaks down why it matters so much for SEO. It's not just about getting your name out there. It's got to be the right way.
Exactly. And the episode talks about how important it is to build high-quality backlinks from good websites. It's not just any random site linking to you. Plus, you got to be visible online across all these different platforms, right? And even, get this, shaping how the public sees your brand can impact SEO.
What? Really?
Yeah, because believe it or not, search engines pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Like they're reading minds now, huh?
Well, kinda.
That whole public perception thing is so interesting to me. I guess, though, it makes sense. If people are saying good things about you, search engines are like, hey, this must be a good brand.
Yeah, it's like a digital seal of approval. Think about it. When big, reputable websites mention you and link back to your site, search engines are like, this content must be pretty valuable, pretty relevant.
It's like a vote of confidence.
Totally. So it builds trust, not just with users, but with the search engines, too.
And we can't forget about shareable content. The episode really talked a lot about how important it is to have content that people actually want to share. And of course, when they share it, you get more mentions, more links, and more people finding you online.
And it's not just about anyone finding you. It's about those people who are actually interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, the right people.
Exactly.
Now, in the episode, they lay out these 6 core strategies for digital PR. And I think we should go through them one by one. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we can pull out some really good insights from this episode.
Awesome.
The first one is developing media relationships. And this feels like, the foundation for everything else. What do you think?
It really is. It's all about building those connections with people in the media, like journalists and influencers. But it's got to be strategic, right?
Yeah.
The episode talks about making targeted lists, finding people who genuinely care about your brand and what you're doing.
Not just blasting out random messages to anyone and everyone.
No way.
Yeah.
It's about taking the time to really understand who you're reaching out to. Why are they the right fit?
Yeah. Why them?
And a personalized message, it can really go a long way. People can tell when you've done your homework,
Yeah.
and they appreciate that you're genuinely interested in what they're doing.
I guess it's all about being authentic, right?
Oh, absolutely. And those authentic relationships are like gold in digital PR.
They're everything, yeah. So the next strategy is crafting and distributing digital press releases. This is where things have really changed from the old way of doing PR, right?
Yeah, totally. It's not just about setting out a press release and hoping for the best. This episode really stressed how important it is to make sure your press releases are optimized for search engines and to use online platforms to make sure they're seen by the right people.
So it's not just about the words you use. You got to have a strategy.
Exactly.
What are some mistakes that you see people making with press releases?
Well, definitely irrelevant content is a big one.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying has to actually be newsworthy.
Yeah.
And people often just blast it out to anyone. They don't even think about who they're targeting.
It's got to be the right people, like you said.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you got to make sure it's optimized with the right keywords and links for SEO.
So you got your relationships, you got your press releases. What's next?
Well, the episode talks about mastering sponsored content and guest posting. This is a great way to reach new audiences. It's all about partnering with other publications and getting your brand featured in their content. But, and this is important, you got to do your homework. You want to make sure these publications are reputable and that their audience is actually who you're trying to reach.
So again, it's about making sure your content appears in the right places for the right reasons.
Exactly. It's about context. And, the content itself has to be top-notch. It
Yeah.
can't just be an ad for your brand.
People can see right through that, yeah.
Totally.
Oh.
So make sure it's informative, engaging, insightful, give people something valuable.
Okay, so we're building relationships, crafting press releases, getting featured on these amazing platforms. Everything's going great, right?
Well, hold on, because the episode brings up something we all need to be prepared for: online crisis management.
Okay, yeah,
Because things don't always go as planned, and you got to have a plan for when things go wrong.
that makes sense.
So the episode highlights the importance of having a plan in place just in case for when those oh no moments happen online.
Yeah, you got to know how to react quickly and effectively when there's negative stuff about you online.
Exactly.
Especially now, things can escalate so fast.
They really can. It's crazy. What are some big mistakes you see brands making when they're facing a crisis online?
Oh, that's a good question.
A lot of times, brands just aren't prepared. They don't have a plan for what to do when bad stuff starts happening online.
Oh, wow. So they're just caught off guard.
Totally. And that's why the episode stresses the importance of being proactive, not reactive.
Like anticipating those potential problems.
Exactly. Know what could go wrong, have a clear process for responding, and don't be afraid to be honest with your audience.
That honesty thing just keeps coming up, huh?
It really does. And it makes sense because people can spot a fake a mile away.
Yeah.
So you got to be real. And remember, it's not just about putting out fires. It's about building trust, showing people that you care about your audience.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Let's move on to the next strategy, which is creating digital events. This seems like a fun one.
It is, definitely. The episode talks about things like webinars, podcasts, live streams, all that good stuff.
Yeah, even being a part of those big industry events.
Exactly. It's about giving people something valuable, something they'll remember and connect with your brand.
I love that it's not just about pushing out content, you know?
Yeah.
It's about creating these cool, interactive experiences.
And it helps you build relationships, show off your expertise. You could really become a thought leader in your industry.
Totally. And last but not least, we have leveraging digital storytelling. This one always speaks to me.
Me too.
It's not just about throwing facts at people, it's about telling a story.
Exactly. The episode really drives home the power of telling those compelling brand stories, and using cool formats like video, images, even audio to connect with your audience on a deeper level, to make them feel something.
That's what makes a brand memorable, right?
It is. It's not just the stuff they sell. It's the story they tell.
So we've talked about these 6 core strategies, but now I want to know, how does all of this connect back to SEO?
Right.
Because that's where the magic really happens.
Totally. And that's where digital PR becomes this powerhouse tool for making your website climb those search engine rankings.
The episode had a few good points about this, like
Yeah.
optimizing those press releases with the right keywords and linking back to your own website, and then creating what they called linkable content, stuff like infographics and case studies.
Yeah, things that people naturally want to share and link to.
Exactly. And of course, you got to keep an eye out for when people are talking about your brand online, and then try to turn those mentions into backlinks.
Totally. And it's not just about the content itself. You got to make sure your whole online presence is top-notch and consistent across all these different platforms. Keep those profiles up to date. Make sure you're linking back to your website. All that stuff matters.
It's about tying it all together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we can't forget about the power of influencers. Partnering with the right people who have a strong following in your industry can really boost your reach. And it's amazing how they can get people talking about you and linking back to your site naturally.
It's like organic growth, right?
Yeah. But the episode does warn us. It's got to be authentic. You got to find influencers who actually believe in your brand and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because when it's forced, people can tell.
Right. It can actually hurt you if it's not a genuine connection.
Definitely.
So it's not about just getting anyone to talk about you.
No,
It's got to be the right people.
exactly.
So we've talked about strategies, SEO, the whole shebang. But what are some best practices for really succeeding with digital PR? I'm guessing authenticity is going to come up again here.
Oh, you bet it does. The episode hammers home the importance of being real, being transparent in all your communication online.
Because like we said, people can sniff out a fake a mile away.
Yeah. And they want to see that you're a brand they can trust, a brand that's relatable.
So you got to be authentic, but also consistent.
Exactly. Build a brand identity that people recognize and trust.
Everywhere they see you, you're the same brand, the real you.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, What works on one platform might not work on another. So you got to adjust your approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. But no matter what, you can't just put stuff out there and hope for the best. You got to track how it's doing, right?
Absolutely. Measurement is key.
Yeah.
You got to know what's working and what's not so you can adjust your strategy.
So how do we actually measure how well our digital PR is doing? What are we looking at?
The episode talks about a bunch of different things like how much media coverage are you getting and how good is it? Are people seeing your stuff online and are they sharing it, commenting on it, liking it? What about your backlinks? Are they coming from good websites? Are people saying good things about your brand? And are people actually clicking on those links and visiting your website from your digital PR efforts?
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And then you also got to look at how all of this is affecting your search engine rankings. Are you moving up for those keywords you're targeting?
So it's about looking at the whole picture, not just one little piece.
Totally.
But out of all those things, how important is it to actually analyze what people are saying about your brand?
It's huge. It gives you a sense of how people are actually feeling about your brand.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just the numbers, you know.
Yeah.
It's about the emotions behind those likes and shares. Are people saying good things, bad things, neutral?
It's like taking your brand's temperature emotionally.
Exactly. And understanding those emotions can help you adjust what you're saying, fix any problems that might be brewing, and just overall improve how people see your brand.
So before we move on, I want to talk about the challenges that come with digital PR. Like, what makes it tough?
Yeah, for sure.
The episode talked about a few big ones, like there's so much content out there, it's hard to stand out. And then things change so fast online, it's like a whirlwind.
It really is.
It's also hard to measure if your efforts are actually paying off. And then there's the whole crisis management thing.
Yep.
And even just building those authentic relationships we keep talking about.
All very real challenges.
So with all that content out there, how do you even begin to cut through the noise?
The episode's advice was to really double down on creating content that is unique, valuable, and relevant to your audience.
Okay, so it's not just about creating more content.
No way. It's about quality over quantity.
It's got to be good.
Exactly.
So how do we make sure our content actually stands out in this like sea of content online?
You got to start by really understanding your audience. Like, what are they struggling with? What do they need? What questions do they have? What would actually make their lives easier or more enjoyable?
So it's about solving problems, giving people something they actually need.
Absolutely. And maybe even entertaining them a little bit along the way.
Why not, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative with different formats and tell those stories that really capture people's attention. Experiment, try new things, see what your audience likes.
That makes sense. But what about all the constant changes happening online? How do you keep up with all the new platforms and trends? It's exhausting.
It can be. The key is to be a lifelong learner. Stay curious, stay informed, and always be ready to adapt. The episode suggested subscribing to industry newsletters, attending those webinars, following the experts on social media.
Like immerse yourself in the world.
Totally. And never stop trying new things. Because what worked yesterday might not work today, so you got to be ready to evolve.
That's great advice. And I think it applies to so much more than just digital PR. Like always be learning, always be growing.
Oh, absolutely. And the more you learn, the more confident you'll feel navigating this crazy online world.
Okay, so this wraps up the first part of our deep dive. We've talked about what digital PR is, why it's so important, and even how to do it.
It's a lot to cover, but we're just getting started.
Yeah, there's still so much more to explore.
Definitely.
And in the next part, we're going to dig even deeper into some of those strategies and tactics we touched on.
Yeah, we'll talk about how to craft those awesome press releases that get noticed, how to build those crucial relationships with journalists and influencers, and how to create content that your audience actually cares about.
We'll also tackle those challenges we discussed, like how to handle online crises and how to stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing digital world.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our digital PR deep dive.
We'll be right back after a short break.
See you soon. Welcome back to our deep dive into digital PR. Are you ready to really get into it?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's get tactical.
Okay, great.
We were talking about building those media relationships as like a foundation.
Yeah.
But how do we actually build those connections? Like we make a list of journalists and influencers, but then what?
Well, this Dodgemark episode I keep mentioning, they really stress that you got to know your audience right. And then you tailor how you approach people based on that. You got to find those journalists and influencers who actually align with your brand, with your message.
So you're not just randomly reaching out to any journalist or influencer?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's not a numbers game. It's about finding the right people, the ones
Huh.
who genuinely care about what you're doing.
Okay, so how do we find those people?
Well, there are some great tools out there. The episode mentions Cision, which is really good for analyzing the media landscape and seeing who's writing about what. And then there's HRO, which stands for Help a Reporter Out.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a great platform for finding journalists who are actually looking for sources for their stories.
Oh, so you're not just cold emailing people, you're actually positioning yourself as like a helpful resource.
Exactly.
I like that.
And for influencers, it's about building those genuine relationships. Just like with journalists, engage with their stuff online, share their work, maybe even start a conversation before you ever pitch them anything.
Oh, so it's like building a rapport over time.
Exactly. Show them that you're genuinely interested in what they're doing.
So you add value to their world first.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, now let's talk about those digital press releases.
Okay, yeah.
We talked about optimizing them.
Right.
But can we get into some more specifics?
Sure.
Like, how do we actually write a press release that's going to get noticed and rank well in those search engines?
Well, keywords are super important, right? Make sure you're using strong, relevant keywords throughout your press release, especially in the headline and the first paragraph. Think about what people would actually type into Google when they're searching for information related to your news.
Okay, so use the words people are actually searching for.
Exactly.
Okay.
But don't just stuff it with keywords.
Right. It's got to be
Yeah.
natural.
Totally. It's got to make sense. And then don't forget about internal links. Use your press release to link to other pages on your website. It helps boost your SEO and gives people a chance to learn more about what you do.
Okay, so keywords, internal links. What else? What about the structure and format? Like, what should it look like?
Keep it short and sweet. Journalists are busy. They don't have time to read a novel. The episode suggests using a clear, inverted pyramid structure. That means you start with the most important info up front.
Oh, okay. So like the who, what, where, when, why, all that jazz.
Exactly. Get all that out of the way in the first paragraph. And don't forget to include some high-quality images or videos. Make it visually appealing. It helps it stand out, and people are more likely to share it.
Okay, so you've got your press release all polished up. Now, how do we get it out there?
Well, there are these online platforms specifically for distributing press releases. The episode mentions a few, like Cision, PR Newswire, Business Wire.
Okay, so it's not just about sending it to your personal contacts anymore.
No, it's about casting a wider net.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move on to mastering sponsored content and guest posting. Any tips for finding those perfect partners and creating content that really hits the mark with their audience?
Well, think about what publications your target audience already reads and trusts.
Okay.
And look at the kind of content they're putting out there. What are their values? What are their rules for content? You want to make sure you're a good fit, both in terms of the audience and how you create content.
Yeah, it's got to be authentic.
Exactly. And when you're creating the content itself, make sure it's valuable for the readers. Think informative, educational, entertaining, not just like a big ad for your company.
Right, you're trying to provide value, not just push your product.
Exactly.
But how do we make sure that content actually gets us results, you know?
Well, the episode suggests setting some clear goals. What do you want to achieve with this sponsored content or guest post? Is it brand awareness? Website traffic? More leads?
Okay, so you got to figure out what you're trying to achieve first.
Exactly. And then you can track how well you're doing.
That makes sense. Okay, this next one always feels a little bit scary to me, but online crisis management.
Yeah, I get it.
What are some things we can do to prepare for, like the inevitable? Because it feels like something's always going to happen online, right?
Oh, yeah. And the episode really recommends creating a crisis communication plan. Basically, it's a document that outlines how you're going to respond if something bad happens online.
So it's like a playbook.
Exactly. It should include things like who needs to be involved, how you're going to communicate with each other, and even some pre-written messages for different situations.
So you're not scrambling to figure things out when you're already in the middle of a crisis.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Be prepared.
Yeah. What are some common mistakes you see brands making when they're facing an online crisis?
One of the biggest ones is being too slow to respond, or not responding at all.
Really? You can't just ignore it.
Really, no. Things move so fast online, and when you're silent, it can make people think you're guilty or that you don't care.
Oh, okay. So you got to be quick and you got to be transparent.
Exactly. But what about when the criticism is just plain wrong?
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
Well, the episode emphasizes staying calm and professional, even when you feel like you're being attacked.
Easier said than done, right?
It can be. But try not to get defensive or start arguing online. Instead, focus on addressing those concerns clearly and calmly, providing the facts, and showing that you're committed to resolving the issue.
So take a deep breath, stick to the facts, and don't lose your cool.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Creating digital events sounds like a lot more fun.
It can be.
How do we make sure our events are successful?
Well, focus on giving people real value.
All right.
Think about the topics, the speakers, the format. Make sure it's something that your target audience is going to be excited about.
Right, and get the word out.
Exactly. Promote it.
Yeah.
Use social media, email marketing, maybe even paid advertising if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Partner with other brands or influencers to reach a wider audience. Oh, and create a hashtag for your event.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great way to get people talking online.
Okay, last strategy. Leveraging digital storytelling.
Yeah.
How do we turn information into a story that people will actually want to listen to?
Think about what makes your brand unique. What are your values? What challenges have you overcome? What impact are you trying to make?
So it's about finding the heart of your brand.
Exactly. And then share it in a way that connects with people on an emotional level. Don't be afraid to use different formats like video, audio, images, even interactive stuff to really bring that story to life.
That's awesome. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier about measuring our results. How do we prove that all this hard work is actually worth it?
Well, it starts with setting clear goals for each campaign. What are you hoping to achieve?
Okay.
And then you choose the metrics that will help you track your progress towards those goals.
So if I'm focused on getting my brand name out there,
Right.
I'm going to look at things like how much media coverage I'm getting, how much people are talking about me online.
Exactly. And if you're focused on driving traffic to your website, you'll want to track things like referral traffic from your digital PR activities.
So it's about aligning your metrics with your goals.
Exactly.
It seems like a lot of this boils down to authenticity, transparency, and genuine connection.
I think you hit the nail on the head. People crave authentic content and real connections.
It's not about manipulating people or tricking them into doing something.
No.
It's about building relationships, fostering trust.
Exactly. And that's what makes digital PR so powerful.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've covered like the what and the why and the how of digital PR, but now I want to talk about those best practices, like those secret ingredients for a really great digital PR strategy.
Yeah, for sure. And like we've been saying, this whole episode really boils down to authenticity. In today's world, people can spot a fake a mile away.
Oh, yeah.
They want those brands that are like genuine and relatable.
Yeah. And I think it goes beyond just like saying the right things.
Oh.
It's got to be in everything you do online.
It's who you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's reflected in how you act, how you interact, your whole approach to digital PR.
Yeah.
It's all about trust,
Yeah. So how do we make sure we're being authentic in our digital PR?
Well, it starts with just being true to who you are as a brand.
Yeah.
Your values, your identity. Don't try to be something you're not. Embrace what makes you unique.
Be yourself.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And let that shine through in like your content and how you talk to people online.
Find your voice.
Yeah. And treat your audience like real people, not just numbers.
Yeah, engage with them, like respond to their comments. Show them you're actually listening.
Exactly.
Okay, so authenticity is key. What else?
Yeah, transparency.
Right, that came up a lot in the episode too.
Yeah. It's about being open and honest, acknowledging when you mess up.
And not being afraid to like pull back the curtain a little bit.
Totally. Let people see what's going on behind the scenes.
And I think that's especially important when things go wrong.
Oh, absolutely. If something happens, you got to communicate openly and honestly.
Yeah.
Don't try to hide it.
Yeah. Own it.
Exactly. Tell people what happened, take responsibility, and explain what you're doing to fix it.
Be accountable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to show that you're human. Everyone makes mistakes.
People appreciate that honesty. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've talked about relationships with journalists, influencers, our audience. But the episode also mentioned collaborating with other brands.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Why is that important?
Well, when you team up with other brands, you can reach more people,
Okay.
tap into new audiences,
Yeah.
and you can create content that's like totally unique, stuff you couldn't do on your own.
So it's like win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
How do we find those good partners, though?
Well, look for brands that share your values and target a similar audience.
Okay.
And when you reach out to them, be clear about what you're offering and how it will benefit both of you. And make sure the content you create together is actually interesting for both audiences.
Something that everyone will love. Now, this is something I struggle with, like keeping up with all the changes in the digital world.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like a full-time job just keeping up with the new platforms and trends.
So how do we stay ahead of the curve?
The episode really stresses the importance of, like, always learning, always adapting, be curious, stay informed.
Okay, but how?
Make it a habit to read industry blogs, go to webinars, follow the experts on social media. Like, really immerse yourself in the world of digital PR.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to try new things. What worked last year might not work this year.
So always be experimenting.
Yep.
That's great advice. So as we wrap up this deep dive into digital PR, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about so much, but I think the most important thing to remember is that it all comes back to human connection.
Absolutely.
It's about those relationships, building trust, having genuine interactions online,
It's about sharing your story and connecting with your audience in a meaningful way.
and making a positive impact.
Exactly. And it's a journey. So enjoy the ride, stay curious, and never stop exploring.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.